Also genau, wir machen jetzt noch keine Kaffeepause. Ja. So schnell ist sie nicht verdient. Wir haben jetzt erstmal den Vortrag von Naomi Harris und müssen jetzt wieder auf Zoom umschalten, was wir jetzt gleich versuchen. Und dann darfst du gleich...
Ich gehe noch kurz, ich werde es ja vorstellen zuerst.
Ja,
ne?
genau. Ja, wir schalten mal kurz erst um. Das kann ja echt bleiben.
Ich setze mich hier hin, damit Naomi mich sieht, weil das ist irgendwie seltsam. Wo soll ich mich hinsetzen? Da? Kann ich anfangen oder muss ich noch warten, bis irgendwas... Ich kann anfangen? Okay. Im Moment sehe ich Naomi noch nicht, aber egal, ich stelle sie schon mal vor, das tue ich wieder mit dem kurzen Text aus der Broschüre. Naomis Hand. Naomi, hallo? Hi Naomi, I'm Lukas.
Hi Lucas, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. I'm the guy who's moderating today. Sorry? Wow, you have a great background.
Jetzt kannst du sprechen.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, you have a great background, I want to say. Congratulations.
Wait, which one do you want to talk to?
So, first of all, hello.
Are we using this one?
The dog on the side.
Okay, so hold on.
No, it's the front camera.
I'm going to introduce you in German to the public, to the audience, and then you're going to show your film. But first of all, I will introduce you in person, that the people know whom they are listening to soon. Naomi Harris, die Kunst der durchgestrichen Verführung, nicht durchgestrichen, des subtilen Humors. Die kanadische Porträtfotografin Naomi Harris aus Toronto in Kanada untersucht und dokumentiert in ihren Serien soziale Trends und Phänomene der zunehmend globalisierten und kulturell homogenisierten Welt. Anhand ihres Projektes EUSA, das einzelne kostümierte Protagonisten europäischer Orte mit dem Thema Amerika und amerikanischer Orte mit dem Thema Europa zeigt, wird Harris ihre künstlerische Praxis und den oft unfreiwillig komischen und skurrilen Charakter unserer Begeisterung für andere Kulturen darstellen. USA war 2016 für den Luma Rencontre Dummy Book Award nominiert und wurde 2018 vom Kehrer Verlag Heidelberg veröffentlicht. Now I switch to... you're drinking. Don't drink too much. So actually I do know just two small stories of Naomi. So this is the first time we meet lively, somehow not in person. But what I saw and what we will see soon is this hilarious Kickstarter video for USA. And the second one, and this is really very touching to me, is the small story you wrote about the death of your father in this small booklet. My father died 20 years minus 2 days before your father did. So when I read this in 2020, 8th of September, your father had died, and read the story, which was so similar to the story of my father in a way, I couldn't laugh. This was just touching to me. And this is the whole span I want to open up for you now as a platform for your presentation, between the total grief and the total laughter. And I'm sure you will fill it with humor.
I apologize. I couldn't hear you for the first... It's just now.
Oh my God.
So you start again.
Shall I start again? Can you hear me?
Now I can hear you.
What I said is, can I repeat that? I said that just 2 points. I know 2 things from you. I know your small video trailer from USA, and I read the story of the death of your father. And my father died 20 years minus 2 days before your father did. So there is a sort of coincidence where we meet in this wide span between grief and laughter, which might be filled with this humorous attitude, which I hope I can't wait to hear more from you now from your presentation.
Sorry, sound was bad, but thank you. Yeah.
So
brief and loud. Okay, so why don't we start off? I'm going to share my screen. And I'm going to share something. And I'm assuming you're only seeing me in the mountains, not the tulips, right?
Yes. I'm going to move away now and sit to the big screen.
I'm going to just keep the screen over here then, because it's lighting me so much nicer other than the side light. Okay. So I'm going to share my screen with the sound, and I'm going to play you something.
Hi, I'm Canadian photographer Naomi Harris, but you might know me better as Maggie's mom. You might also know my book, America Swings, which isn't about swing dancing. Well, on my last shoot for America Swings, I discovered a small tourist town called Helen, Georgia. It resembled a Bavarian town, complete with cuckoo clocks, gingerbread, and Confederate flags. I did a little research on the Google and discovered a bunch of European-themed places in America and American-themed places in Europe, too. And EUSA was born. Beginning with a rendezvous weekend at Wild West theme park High Chaparral in Sweden in 2008, I photographed at over 25 locations on both continents. I've been to Civil War reenactments in the Czech Republic, MyFest in Leavenworth, Washington, numerous Western theme parks in Germany, France, Holland, and Italy, an authentic Dutch windmill in Michigan, a rockabilly festival in Hungary, and the world's longest Oktoberfest in Helen, Georgia, which incidentally begins in August and runs on through till November. My final shoot was of a Norwegian festival in Petersburg, Alaska in 2015. Why was I interested in creating EUSA? Because I wanted to show this cultural phenomenon of us being interested in the other, but another of the past and not of present times. Globalization has led to a homogenization of our cultures. We're hard-pressed to find many differences between our societies anymore. I've been working along with Dutch book designer Toon van der Heijden to create a monograph of 145 images from both sides of the pond, along with the fun and quirky email conversation between Dutch curator and artist Eric Kessels and Los Angeles Times arts and culture critic Carolina Miranda, where they discuss the finer points of what's remarkably different about American and European culture and what's shockingly the same. The book is a sure thing. German book publisher Kehrer Verlag is publishing EUSA, launching it this November at Perry Photo. But by you purchasing a copy of your own here, now, on Kickstarter, you're helping me with the cost of producing and publishing it. And for that, I thank you. Do check out some of the other rewards, as you can invest in some art, a portrait session with me, or a weekend getaway to Solvang, where we can discuss all things photo, or just get drunk and stuff ourselves on Abers Givers. Say, wouldn't EUSA make a great Christmas gift? But really, whatever the occasion, a copy of EUSA tells your loved ones just how special you think they are. Just as I think Maggie is. Thanks for your support. That one was really high-pitched. America Swings. It's upside down. Maggie, 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 Maggie. Beginning with a rendezvous. I don't want to hold that up against my ear. That hurt. I got hair in my mouth. There's a pocket, not two pockets. That's the weirdest thing I've ever seen.
Okay. How's everyone doing? So I'm a little confused. I had tested this out with you guys the other day with having a camera in the front and a camera on the side for a slideshow and talking separately, but I think we're just doing this camera. So here I am, 9 a.m. in the Alps in a dirndl, as one does on a Saturday. So as you saw in the video, I'm not exactly a serious photographer. I don't take myself too seriously. Otherwise, why else would I be in a dirndl at 9 a.m. on a Saturday in Canada? But in the video, I mentioned how I discovered this project. And yes, I did a book about swingers. And I traveled all over America for 5 years, going to a variety of swinger parties. And I went to one, it was the very last party I was photographing because I was trying to geographically get all over the country, and also suburbia. I wasn't interested in big cities. I went to a party in the mountains of Georgia, so like about an hour and a half north of Atlanta. So really remote, really redneck, if you will. And when I was there, I got there a little earlier, and the head of the party said to me, you know, you should go to this little town called Helen. I had a lot of time to kill. So I'm like, all right, great, I'll go to Helen. What's in Helen? And he's like, oh, I'm not telling you, just go. And so off I went, and I get to this, I drive up to this little town, doesn't even have a stoplight, it's so small. And all of a sudden I see buildings with gingerbread on the wall, like, you know, like Bavaria, kind of like where you people are. I mean, although a little south, but it was bizarre because I'm in America, and all of a sudden all the buildings look like I'm out of a scene from The Sound of Music. And so I get out of the car, I park, I get out, I start looking around, and there's stores that sell like Confederate flag t-shirts and things that's like, it's a Southern thing, y'all. So it's got that real redneck quality. But then you can also see cuckoo clocks and stuff like that. So I'm just like, this is bizarre. This is really weird. And this was in like January. So there wasn't a lot of tourists. It was, you know, down season. It's cold. It's like, you know. So I get back to my motel room and I say to myself, if this is here, what else is in America? And I start going on the computer and I find all these different places that have America, like in America, but like European themed. And why don't I just, you don't need to see me while I'm talking. Why don't I just go straight into the slideshow? And, oh, okay, but wait a second. I don't want to share computers. Ooh, I don't know if okay, I'm going to take the sound off because I don't know if I keep it on if you're going to hear me or not. Oops. Okay. So I think you're able to see the slideshow. If there's any problems, please text me so I know I'm doing this correctly. And can you hear me okay? Maybe send me a text so I know you are hearing me okay. Because I'm talking to my basement. And everyone's responding wonderfully. Everyone's loving it. Okay, so I don't see any text messages, so I think we're good. Okay, welcome, or willkommen if you're German. So anyway, I'm in this little town, and I'm like mesmerized by how German it looks. And I decide to go home or to the motel, and I start Googling. And this is Frankenmuth in Michigan. They also have a German theme to it. This is in Helen. This is the actual town that I discovered. And there's like these little details. And as you heard in the video, I'm saying that they boast the world's largest or longest Oktoberfest. It starts in August and goes till like November. And I see these little details and I'm like, okay, so great. These things are happening in America. So there's like Orange City, Iowa, Leavenworth, Washington, New Braunfels, Texas. What's happening in Europe? And I start Googling because at the time it was when the euro had just overpowered the US dollar. Because at the beginning, the US dollar was actually stronger than the euro, right? But this was around the time where the euro just overpowered the US dollar. And so I really love wordplay. And I'm like, okay, EU, USA, EUSA. I'm going to invent my own continent. So this is in, I can't remember the name of the place, but it's in Germany, not far from the border with Poland, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember the name of the place, though. That's not good. I should have looked this stuff up. This is, again, Helen, Georgia. And if you notice, like in America, people kind of half-ass things. So for him to wear a pair of lederhosen just silk screened on a t-shirt was good enough. But he does have the wiener dog, right? This is in Orange City, Iowa. So I did this. I researched the how many places existed in America, and there were quite a few. But in Europe, the thing is, it's different. In Europe, you don't have cities that have the a theme of America. Maybe it exists. I never found it. But what you do have are these rendezvous. So this was at the very, very first shoot that I did. It was in Sweden, and it's a weird Wild West theme park called High Chaparral. And these guys get together once a year and they do these rendezvous. So these are Confederate soldiers. And they don't just dress up like Confederate soldiers. They know the history inside and out. And what I found also really fascinating is at a lot of the places, people maybe didn't even speak English, but there was this fascination with America. But it's not this fascination with America of like today and as we know it. It's like America from 150 years ago. So that's really bizarre to me. And the same holds true in America when people are fascinated. Like here's a baby at this Tulip Day Festival in in Orange City, Iowa, and they dress the child up as if she's like, well, minus the shoes, but as if she's like a baby from Holland 150 years ago. So there's this weird, like, we're not interested in each other today because that's where globalization comes in. We all dress the same, we talk the same, well, maybe not the same language, but we speak the same language in the sense of social media, for example. We are all on Instagram, we're all on Facebook. We all are on iPhones for the most part. I mean, if I could see you in the audience, I would say, please raise your hand if you're wearing, a pair of Levi jeans. Please raise your hand if you're wearing Converse. Please raise your hand if you're using an iPhone today. And you'd be amazed, like we're all the same all over the world. Even the dogs. Okay, this is also in Orange City, Iowa. And that's what really fascinated me about this project is that we are so interested in the other, but it's a fantastical other. It's not an other that exists today. And I think even more so, so I finished the project in 2015. And, we're having an election. I'm a dual citizen. I'm in Canada right now, but I'm American Canadian. And we're having an election in 10 days that's going to not just affect America, but the entire planet. We like to think, what happens in the US is just they're like, oh, they have this crazy president and it's just, but it's not. It reverberates all over the world. And whatever happens in America happens everywhere. So this is in Germany. You would think we're in Sturgis or something like that at the bike rally, but these are your own people. These are Germans, but they're fascinated with the American culture. And it's just to me like, okay, here we are in Leavenworth, Washington, and this is while it's not a German themed, it's a German themed town, but it wasn't like a lot of the places in America were made themed because people from, let's say, Holland all settled there. But that's not how this town worked. This town, and actually Helen as well, they're just tourist towns, and they made this the town look like this so they could attract tourists. So like, for example, in Helen, the reason they did it, this is the first town I found in Georgia, was in the 70s, I think it was, they were facing a recession. They used to have a silver mine. And what happened, the mine closed, I believe it was a silver mine, the mine closed and they didn't have any work anymore. They had a town meeting and they're freaking out. And I don't know how many of you have ever seen the movie Jaws, but there's the scene in the movie Jaws where everyone's talking about the shark and what are you going to do? And then the one guy scratches the blackboard and everyone turns to look at him and it's like, I got a boat. Well, this guy, he had fought in World War II, and he said, I've been to Switzerland. We're going to throw gingerbread up on all these houses, and we're going to turn it into a tourist town. And that's what they did. And, that's the American way to reinvent themselves. I want to actually talk a little bit about why Germans are so fascinated with the Wild West in this part of America. This was shot in, and I'm going to butcher the name, I'm sorry, Rajabul. That's where the author Karl May lived. And I'm sure if I could look out into the audience, I would ask you all to raise your hands. How many of you have seen the, or sorry, maybe seen the movies, but read, as children, read the books by Karl May of Winnetou? Okay, I'm looking out magically and I see about half of you. That's wonderful. The older people probably would have read Winnetou more than the young people. You guys are more into Harry Potter. But anyway, Karl May, he wrote this series of books about an Native American, who traveled around the country with his right-hand man, Shuttlecock, I think that was his name, who was a German. And they had all these adventures and misadventures, near mishaps, being in danger and what have you. And all of these people were fascinated. All these young children read these books ferociously and were fascinated by the Native experience. Meanwhile, Karl May never set foot in America until, like, I think shortly before he died. He wrote these books from jail. He wasn't even like, he probably stole the story actually from somebody else, but he never had set foot in America, never met a Native American, yet wrote these books that fascinated the entire country. And it moved on into other countries too. Like in the Czech Republic, they read these books, and that's why they're so fascinated. In Holland, I met people who read the books. And this is where you all get your fascination with Native American and that sort of pioneer days of America. And that fascinated me, that a book could really influence the culture still so many years later. He wrote the books in the 1880s. And in fact, when Hitler burned a lot of books, he didn't burn these books because he loved them as a child. And so the Winnetou, the Karl May series survived. This is in Hungary. This guy has a Caprice Classic, which is the cop car actually in America back in the 70s. And that's what he has tattooed on his back. He loves his car that much. This was Eastern France, I believe. And this guy loved America so much. He has a 9/11 tattoo on his arm, didn't speak a lick of English. So this was also super fascinating to me. The fact that people could love a country, but just with the idea of the country, because they couldn't even actually communicate. So that was hard for me on these when I would drive around. And that's the thing. In America, I drive all over the country, no big deal. So when I would come to Europe, I'd rent a car, I'd sleep in the car, and I'd drive all over Europe. And people would think I was crazy that I would be driving from like the south of France all the way to the north of Germany to go to the Karl May spiel. And to me, it was an hour, like, you know, a day and a half of driving. So it was no big deal. So when I'm at these things, I don't really have any idea of what I'm going to find. But then I look for weird things like, you know, people drinking beer with a cast on their arm, or grandmothers trying to stab their grandsons in the eye with sausages. This is in Texas, by the way, because everything's bigger in Texas. Again, that Wild West theme park in Western Platz, is that what it's called? Oh, it's in Germany, but I can't remember. But, you know, can dancers. Like, this is the idea of what America looked like. And then, of course, this is the flip side. This is the French idea of what America looks like. Little girls in American flag bikinis. And of course, America, we take it to a different level. We don't need to travel to France or Paris. We got it here. We got it in Las Vegas. Why actually go to Europe? Just, oh, yeah, see, here we go again. This is Las Vegas. We don't need to go to Venice. Why spend all that money to travel to Europe when we can just do it there? Which brings me to another point. I mean, I was supposed to come to this event in April, and then of course it got postponed. And I don't know when I'm going to get on a plane again. None of us do. So we need to now, with Corona, be careful and be safe and stay home, cover our faces, wear masks. And we can just travel through pictures. which makes me sad because I always travel in order to take my pictures. This is in Texas because, you know, you can't just wear a dirndl. You have to throw a little country into it, right? And in answer to Lucas's, you know, introducing sadness and humor, I'm Jewish, and one of the things that Jews do very well is humor. And it's like we bury our pain into jokes, and that's how you survive. And so, you know, while my dad died not quite 2 months ago, I try not to have sad feelings. I try to, you know, sure, there's this emptiness in the house and this feeling of, you know, I obviously miss him, but I also just try to think of the good times and the funny times. And my father would join me on a lot of my road trips, not so much while photographing for this project, but just in general. And it would always start off fairly well, but inevitably 2-3 days into it, there'd be a fight. And, you know, these are the kinds of things that when I look at my pictures and I think about my dad, I try to think of always the good stuff, but then there's always, you know, I call it sweet and sour. Like the very last thing my father said to me before he fell into unconsciousness. I don't know if you're familiar. There's a cookie, it's a Jewish cookie called a Hamantash. And it's a triangular cookie with a filling in it. And it had, the one that I like to buy him and myself is a prune. And so I went to his room, he was lying in bed, and I said, Dad, I'm gonna go to the bakery, I'm gonna buy you a prune Hamantaschen, because that's, you know, they're called Hamantaschen. And he goes, one cookie is a Hamantash. And that's what he would say to me all the time. And it was kind of like a very sweet and sour last words, because it's like, on the one hand, it's very sweet, like correcting me, Hamantaschen is Hamantash. But at the same time, it's, hey, listen, dummy, how many times do I have to correct you before you're going to get it right? So I digress. This is again in Rajibul. This guy, his quote unquote native name was Lonely Boy. And he lived like this. Both, he would come to Rajibul for the summer, but he said he had a teepee in his backyard. So he said he wished he had been born native, which brings me to another comment. It's interesting because in America, or in Canada, if you dress up in Native American clothing, people really, you know, natives, it's cultural appropriation. Whereas in Europe, for some reason, it doesn't seem to register the same way. Maybe it's changing. But back then, people were saying, you know, I dress like this because I relate and I admire. But here, it's like, no, you don't wear native clothing. But you do buy $12 giant pretzels. I mean, if this was over here in Canada, this would not go over very well. But I do love that he still keeps it a little bit, you know, German as we look down at his footwear. And these are the little things that I look for in the picture. Like, you know, if you look knee up, okay, the guy looks like he's native. But then you bring in that footwear. You can always tell a European by their footwear. This is in Alaska. And I think like a lot of my pictures may be funny, but there is a little bit of a sense of pathos to them as well. Like they had wheeled him out from the nursing home so he could see this parade. And, you know, it's a little sad with his little Viking horns and sword. That's from the first event in Sweden. And these were, what do you call it? Like single shot guns where you have to put gunpowder in and, you know, you pound it down. But again, these guys would make their costumes by hand. They would hand sew these things. They did research. And then in America, well, actually, they got the real deal on, but you know, here we are again in Texas. But most Americans, they would just throw on a t-shirt or something. You were hard pressed to find people really in costume, but not in Europe. This is in France. Again in Germany. And like they have a Confederate flag at their tents or their camping site, which again, not really. You don't put the Confederate flag out these days unless you're, you know, siding with that side, if you know what I mean. But in Europe, I think part of it is, and I'm not judging, but I think people don't know the history of what the Confederate flag means. I loved coming to these things. You know, it's just remarkable to me to see people like taking role play to this extent. Leavenworth, Washington. Who doesn't love a parade of Bernese mountain dogs? But, you know, like you would say, oh, I'm in Europe. This is Bavaria, until you look closely and you see the one-way sign, the do not enter, no left turn. And that's a Starbucks drive-through. And then, as every good Western movie has, we have Monument Valley, as with the hero of our story rides off into the sunset and into the desert. So that's my slideshow. I'm going to stop sharing. And then we could talk about the project a little bit more. I don't know if Lucas is coming back. Or we could take some questions from the audience. We're getting there. Sorry, I didn't give you enough.
I'm back again.
Hi.
Fragen? Hat jemand Fragen oder möchte jemand Stellung nehmen zu der Arbeit? The audience is silent.
Could you hear me? Could you understand?
Perfectly,
it's really hard.
Perfectly. Everything came perfectly, almost no distortions.
Okay, it's so hard to know what's happening. I mean, we're thousands of miles and many hours away.
Naomi, I have some questions because one thing interested me most, or several things interested me, but one was, for me, the observation was that it works in both directions. So I identify from the cliché, from the construction, I identify Switzerland in America as well as I identify America in whatever, Hungary. So it's quite convincing as soon as a person wears a mask or a disguise or a costume, and the surrounding is designed a little bit with some, as you said, the footwear or maybe the signposts, and you get trapped by the clichés from the cultures easily. Now I do see myself, which is very strange because I wanted to ask you, did you experience the same or similar?
I mean, for me, what was so fascinating, so I went to Sweden the first time, and it was this very weird theme park that had like a train through, like it had everything that was looking like Pioneer Times America. And it just, everyone there, and no one was wearing normal clothes, because it was a special rendezvous weekend, and everyone was in either fur trapper clothes, Confederate soldier clothes, or Native American clothes. And what was beautiful about it is nobody had a cell phone. I mean, it was 2008, so there wasn't the smartphones yet. But even so, everyone left their electronics in the car. And like no one even had cameras. Like everyone was very strict that it had to be as it was during that time period. And to me, I'd never seen anything quite like that. Like, yeah, I guess there must be reenactments in America, but I had never seen people take something so seriously. So I didn't want to laugh at them. Like, I don't find it, like, while it's funny, I think that there's some seriousness to this. And the idea that this is beyond a hobby, and I don't want to call it an obsession, but it's something that these people are not just doing once. This is an investment to make a costume by hand from leather and trying to keep it, or even like the Confederate soldiers. I didn't include any pictures in the slideshow, but they didn't sleep in tents like you and I would sleep in when we go camping. They did it as if they were on the warplanes. Like, they had wool blankets over sticks and they would sleep. So if it rained, they got wet. Like, so I really admired the dedication. And then you go to some of the places in America, and in America, it's really, for lack of a better word, very half-assed. Like, you throw a t-shirt on and you drink some beer and like, I'm a German now. Although the Dutch took it way more seriously. In the Dutch town, like, if you were in the parade, you had to have a pram that was like from the 1900s. You could not have a modern day pram. So yeah, like, I mean, the attention to details is what makes, I think, the pictures more humorous. But I really was fascinated by the dedication of the people who attended these things. And what's also really sad, and I don't know what it's going to be like in Europe, but in America, the numbers have dwindled. So because so much of these things have been like your heritage. So if you were Dutch, you went to these. And for example, there's a place called New Glarus, Wisconsin, where the people were Swiss. So they had these big, they used to have these big events with the William Tell play. And you'd have the kid with the apple on the head, and they did the whole play. And they would do 3 performances, 2 in English and 1 in Swiss German, because that's where the bulk of the people came from. Now they did 1 play because the numbers dwindled so much. And as the older generation dies, the younger kids, they're not interested. They want video games. They're not interested in seeing a play about William Tell, so these events, I think, are going to, within the next 20, 30 years, they're not going to have these events anymore. That's my prediction.
In a way, this appropriation done by disguising, done by clothing, done by designing the house, etc., leads to a sort of temporary assimilation with what you pretend to be. Why?
Why are they interested in doing it?
Why is that done? I see you as an anthropologist, in a way, studying a phenomena which is, for me, is quite weird on the one side. On the other side, I know quite well how it feels being in a mask or being disguised, and what happens to your own character, that you escape from your own personality, from your identity. But when this is done collectively, as in Carnival, for instance, or as in such whatever reenactments or situations, I ask myself, why are you doing this?
I wanted to ask people more, but again, there was a lot of language barriers. I'm very bad. I didn't, we have to study French in Canada. I did very bad, and I quit after grade 9 because, and now I regret it. Don't stay in school, kids. Stay in school. So, yeah, I don't know why people are so fascinated. I think part of it is, as we become so much more the same, we're looking for things that make us different. And for the Americans who have, let's say, Swiss or Dutch or German or Italian heritage, they're trying to revisit that. And so they're not just the same as everyone else. Like, there is something a little bit more special about them, and therefore they're celebrating that part of their culture. Whereas in Europe, it never made sense to me. Why would someone in Sweden want to dress up like a fur trader? Or why would someone in the Czech Republic be interested in a rockabilly? Or in Italy, being a cowboy. It never made sense to me, but like, I guess it's just the fascination. And again, like I said earlier, it's this fascination with a part of America that isn't current, because current America, Trump aside, Proud Boys aside, all of that stuff aside, current America doesn't look that different than current Germany or current France or current, weird. And that's the thing that makes me saddest, is especially now with Corona. I don't know about where you people are living, but here, a lot of the small businesses are closing. A lot of the restaurants, a lot of the things that make a town unique, a place special, are closing. And what's coming up in place and what's going to be is all big box. I don't think you have as much of a problem about this in Germany or in Europe, but in America, like, I personally will not buy from Amazon if I can avoid doing it, because I want to see small businesses thrive, and I don't want to make Jeff Bezos a trillionaire. And I think these are the things, the little things that keep us unique, is being all lost. And I mean, I think there's something to say about not having, like, we should be inclusive in society, and we should not shun somebody because they come from a different background. But there is something beautiful about having your own cultural traditions. Like, I mean, I'm wearing a dirndl right now. How much longer are you going to have in Germany events where people wear dirndls? Like, people are more like, oh, I'm just going to wear jeans. And we're all just becoming very basic and boring. And controlled. We're all being controlled by the massive corporations. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that answers your question. I think I keep going off sort of on slightly political tangents.
It's a kangaroo discussion.
I'm sorry?
It's a sort of kangaroo discussion. I'm very used to, and I like it. Thank you.
Okay.
So if nobody else has a question, I would say we now going to have the coffee break. But first of all, I want to say thank you very much, Naomi, for your presentation. And now I see it's a coffee mug. It's not a beer.
It's tea, actually.
Tea. Okay. So we are going to have a coffee too now. And for your breakfast, good luck. Enjoy for your second breakfast. And hope to see you in reality once, maybe in this Bavarian town nearby your place.
The cyber Bavarian. Yeah. See, we don't really need to go anywhere. Stay home, visit any you want to. You just put it behind you. There you are, poof.
But then we still have this video conversation. So I'm going to this Indian town reenactment gaming in Sachsen-Anhalt, and you go to the Bavarian town, and we meet there.
Sure, it all works.
All right.
One day we'll meet in person, I hope. And I'm sorry about your father. I'm sorry that the reading.
No, it's 20 years ago, but I'm sorry for you.
Well, you know what? Unfortunately, it was unexpected, but Corona. These are the things. He did not have Corona, but it's life.
The whole situation was affected. Yeah.
Interrupted. We have to take it seriously. That's a really weird note to end this talk on.
It's a good end for humor, talk about humor, I think. Let's keep it like that.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Bye-bye. So, ich mache jetzt noch kurz die Abmoderation zur Pause. Also, unten gibt es Kaffee und Kuchen und wir können uns dort bis 16:15 Uhr verköstigen, unterhalten, in kleinen Gruppen, wie auch immer. Danach geht es hier weiter mit Jürgen und de Wiel und ich freue mich, wenn ihr weiterhin dabei seid. Bis gleich.